All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman. Wow, was yesterday fun. Just NFL news, transactions pouring in. It's been a minute, but it is good to have some fresh NFL stuff to react to. We are going to get into it all on this show. I'm excited to recap all of the stuff that happened with the franchise tag deadline yesterday. Deadlines spur action, as Andrew Brandt has said many times before, and that was in full effect yesterday. Teams trying to get a lot done with that big franchise tag deadline yesterday afternoon. So we're going to get into it. We're going to go through all of the big bullet points in this show. But first, I do want to remind you, not going to give you the full spiel here, but this show is brought to you by my Patreon. That is patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where you can not just support the show, but become a part of it by gaining access to the mailbag for the show that we're going to get into at the end here. But also, if you enjoy my draft content, there is loads of draft content up there you can get exclusive access to. You'll support this show and my channel in the process, so I appreciate you checking that out in advance. It really means a lot to me. All right, let's get into it. Starting with the big one, Dak Prescott, major contract extension for the Dallas Cowboys, the now future franchise quarterback of the team after really years of kind of prolonged contract discussions surrounding Dak. And this is obviously huge for Dak Prescott. He got everything he wanted. Obviously the money, $40 million a year for 4 years, which is right what he was saying all along he wanted. That is top quarterback dollar right there with Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, more than Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, you name it. He is one of the richest players in the league now, at least on a per-year basis, and has now joined the elite of the elite from a financial point of view in this country. So Dak, awesome for him. That is generational wealth. He already had generational wealth after getting the tag once, but now, his great-great-grandkids aren't going to have to work if they don't want to. But awesome news for Dak Prescott. This was an awesome sort of comeback narrative for him and is a great end to a story, really. The Cinderella story of 5th-round pick, 4th-round pick, ends up taking Tony Romo's job, played for cheap for years, wanted the money, didn't get it, got franchise tagged, and the big fear from everyone with the franchise tag is you get tagged, you want that big contract, and you get injured, and that ruins your ability to collect the bag later on. And people were afraid with Dak Prescott. I thought that maybe they were just going to franchise tag him and see how he responded to that major ankle injury. But in Dak Prescott's case, the recovery clearly good enough for the Cowboys to commit to him long term. So that's great in its own right, that he's healthy, he's going to be back. Clearly, the Cowboys are a more fun team to watch, a more explosive team. Yes, I still believe have the best receiving core in the NFL, but that receiving core and the upside of that offense gets unlocked by Dak Prescott and his execution as a quarterback, his preparation. He is one of the sharpest, smartest quarterbacks in the NFL and just distributes the ball so well there. So great for Dak Prescott. And beyond this, there's something that was huge for me, not just for Dak, but I think is going to start a trend in the NFL. And that was the addition of a no-tag clause. Not a no-trade clause, a no-tag clause. Dak Prescott cannot be franchise tagged on this contract. And that kind of started with Tom Brady. That was part of how he kind of got his way out, got his way to a more talented roster in Tampa Bay. We saw it with Trent Williams as part of the provisions with the Washington football team. And it's definitely picking up, momentum here. And I think almost every star in about 2 years, when they sign contract extensions, will be working in this no-tag clause. And it's a super fun conversation. It was all around Twitter yesterday with the franchise tags pouring in. And people feel really bad for players that get the franchise tag. And I get that side of it, especially for a guy like Dak Prescott. We're going to talk about some of these other players that when you're super good, just pay the guy, right? But we also talk about players kind of wanting to force their way out. Guys like Deshaun Watson, for example. I would say Trent Brown kind of got his way. Stephon Diggs last year. It's becoming more and more of a trend of player empowerment, players wanting to use their leverage, their power to basically be like their NBA counterparts and go seek, greener pastures, if you will, where they'll be more happy. And I've really pushed back on that. I think part of what makes the NFL so special is that you don't have the players dictating the league, joining these super teams, deciding where they want to play, which in the NBA's case, every single super team that's been formed has been in a major market or in a good climate market. Look at the NFL. 3 of the 4 teams in the championship round, the Buffalo Bills, the Green Bay Packers, and the Kansas City Chiefs. You think in the NBA, LeBron James is going to go take him and his super team to frickin' Kansas City or Green Bay, Wisconsin? No way, no how, never, ever, ever. That is part of what makes the NFL so great. And part of that is the franchise tag. So I'm not totally against the tag. I think there's a lot of situations on players that we saw yesterday that it's fair compensation for the player. This idea that career-ending injuries, case in point Dak Prescott, is definitely a little overstated, and it's good for the league. But there's definitely players that have the leverage and the power to avoid that sort of boogeyman, right? And that's Dak Prescott. That's Tom Brady. Trent Williams, one of the best tackles in football. I think you'll see like Allen Robinson, if he gets a contract extension with the Bears or if they trade him or whatever, he will work in something like this. I really think this is the next step in the player empowerment era for the players in the NFL. Not this idea that they can go on Twitter and express how unhappy they are and force their way out just willy-nilly like that, like James Harden in the NBA, for example. There are examples of that in the NFL, but the NFL does not want that. Money, there's a thing called dead cap in the NFL that's very complicated as well that the NBA doesn't have. So there's a lot of factors there of why this idea that you can just go wherever you want in the NFL, that's never going to happen. But there are players that rightfully so have leverage, that are special talents, or in Dak's case, a special talent, but not an elite talent, but at a premium position, where when you get to the contract negotiation stage, you can say, look, I want a no-tag clause. When this contract's up, I want to be free to go wherever I want. I don't want this boogeyman of the franchise tag where you can hold on to me. That's a huge step for Dak Prescott in maximizing his career wealth, but also for the rest of the NFL to look at this and say, okay, this is kind of that real way that we can have legit contractual power to hit free agency, not have this franchise tag looming over us. So I think we'll see more and more of that. I think that's when you look at things realistically, because everyone, for the most part, all the fans want player empowerment. They want these guys to be happy. They want them to go where they want, be wherever they want. I'm more of a team-minded guy. I think that there's a lot of that would be really bad for the league. But logistically speaking, in the case of like Deshaun Watson, for example, like he signed that contract, right? I think what a lot of people don't realize is, yes, they did wrong by him. They lied to him. It's terrible that happened. I'd be pissed too. But logistically speaking, on the Deshaun Watson thing, he signed a contract that said, I'm going to play football for your team for 4 years, and you are now legally tied to, I think it was $110 million in guarantees. I think as casual fans, we look at these teams, they throw money around like nothing and say, okay, $110 million, that's nothing. They can get rid of that in a heartbeat. If they trade Deshaun Watson, they still have to pay him, right? $110 million. And you have to go to the owner of your team and say, I don't want to play football for you, but you're still going to pay me. So that complicates things a little bit when you actually want to look at the contract that he signed and how that stuff works. But in this case with Dak, he went at it from a contractual standpoint and said, let's put this clause in here that gives me some power. That's a real way to create player empowerment. I think that moving forward, I hope Watson gets his trade and all this stuff. But when you really want to talk about players having power, it's not going to come from expressing how unhappy you are on social media. It's going to come in the actual, boardrooms and the details between these contracts. It's going to come through the CBA and that kind of stuff, not just like this intangible sense of you can go wherever you want, whenever you want, because that's just not ever going to be the case in the NFL. So this is a big step for like player empowerment, all that stuff that people want. And for Dak, it's huge. Like he's going to be able to, if he wants to, hit the market and do like what Tom Brady did, for example, and say like, okay, here's all my options. I can go where I get the best chance to win if that's what he wants to do, or he can go where he gets the most money. So he is free of the boogeyman. It's a huge deal. I wanted to spend a lot of time talking about that because this conversation surrounding player empowerment is super hot and heavy right now. But yeah, good for Dak Prescott. Now, I'm going to change tones a little bit here, as I think this is going to be a change in the narrative of Dak Prescott, in that I think the Cinderella story is now over. It's got a happy ending for Dak Prescott. It had really great arcs. There was injuries. There was Tony Romo in front of him, the fall in the draft. The Cinderella story of Dak Prescott to the ascension of one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL had a beautiful ending of him getting what he wanted. Now, I could dive into something I've talked about plenty of times on this show and other videos before, in that winning a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott making $40 million is an extremely tough sell. They already were not all that good of a football team when they had a loaded roster with him counting for 1% of the salary cap. Now he's going to count for over 20% of the salary cap, which is going to severely decrease the talent around him. And hell, it's not just Dak Prescott, who it's not a bold thing to say he's not an elite quarterback, right? He's either tier 2, tier 3. We can get into that all day, but he's not Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson. There's no doubt. Russell Wilson. There's no doubt he's not one of those guys that are consistently elevating the play to an elite level of everyone around, like those other guys. That's not a bold take. He is much closer to, say, Kirk Cousins than he is Aaron Rodgers. Again, not a hot take there. It's not a hot take to say that this contract is going to severely limit the upside of the Dallas Cowboys. You're looking at basically the team that you have right now, which is not very good, right? That defense is a mess. That's the team they're going to have. They're not going to be able to spend money on free agents. They're going to lose talent. I think this contract is probably going to be pretty front-loaded. It's probably going to be about a $16 million hit in the first year, and I imagine that'll go up to over 40 for the upcoming seasons, just because of the way the cap is working with a decreased salary cap due to the COVID season right now. But you're looking at the Cowboys roster, Zeke's going to be gone next year, but that's addition by subtraction. That'll actually be good for the team. But like Tyron Smith, again, a guy that's been injured, probably going to be a cap casualty like next year, which it's not the end of the world, but you are going to probably have to draft a replacement in the draft at left tackle, which is easier said than done. The defense is in shambles right now. You really just have DeMarcus Lawrence and Jalen Smith, and every other position on that defense is a wreck, and they're not going to have any money to invest in that defense. I mean, how many times have we seen Drew Brees, Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers suffer in the playoffs because their defenses just get obliterated no matter how good they are? And those are elite quarterbacks, not Dak Prescott. You're looking at one of their receivers, Michael Gallup, probably gone next year. So really, it's going to be difficult for them to build this roster around Dak Prescott. It's not a hot take to say that they're very likely not going to win a Super Bowl in this 4-year contract with Dak Prescott. And I'm not saying that they made the wrong decision. It's easier for me to sit here from my desk in Minneapolis and say, like, oh, they should have let him go. They should have torn it down. If Jerry at 77 years old or 79 or 80, whatever he is, if he wanted to get serious about winning a Super Bowl, as long as he's running the team, the best decision would have been to let Dak go, tear this thing up, rebuild it, and maybe 5 years from now you have a new core, a fresh cap space, and all this stuff, which I do believe that. I think they had a better chance of going that route than trying to milk this window with a $40 million Dak Prescott. But there's other factors at hand. There's relationships. There's player development and, players being happy or unhappy if you let Dak go. There's selling tickets. There's the risk involved of what if you never find another quarterback like Dak Prescott. So it's easier for me to sit from my desk in Minneapolis and say, oh, the best decision if they wanted to get serious about winning a Super Bowl would be let him go, hit the reset button, maybe a draft a Trey Lance or whatever in this year's class. I don't know. But that's the thing. I don't know what the correct answer would have been, but I do know that this, from my perspective, from everyone, the conversation around this is going to be, they aren't going to do anything with Dak Prescott at $40 million with this team in this 4-year window. And I think that's a pretty sound take. I'm sorry, Cowboys fans, but this is a change in narrative, right? It's from the underdog story of him as a 5th-round pick making all this money now to now, can he win a Super Bowl on this contract? Which is the ultimate goal, right? So it's this good, feel-good story. We're all happy for Dak. Great dude. Happy to see him get his money. But, like, let's be real. You can check the math on this, but I'm pretty sure that it's been over 10 years since a quarterback making over $25 million has won a Super Bowl. In fact, I'm not sure a quarterback making over $25 million has ever won a Super Bowl. You know, part of what makes Tom Brady so great is he takes pay cuts. He doesn't have this huge liability on his team from a contract standpoint. You know, Russell Wilson, since he's been paid, Seahawks haven't been very good. Aaron Rodgers, they've had a hard time surrounding him with the talent that even he needs to win a Super Bowl. Drew Brees, it's just the math, man. It's just the stats, the analytics, it all backs it up. Like, quarterback is super important. That's why Dak gets paid $40 million. But if you want to talk about winning a Super Bowl, it's damn hard to do it when you're paying that quarterback that price tag, because it is a team sport and you do need a lot of talent around him. So that's going to be the new narrative is, okay, the end of the Cinderella story, and now Dak as one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. Can he fit the billing and live up to that and make the Cowboys a consistent playoff contender and elevate these guys? Or as the team falls apart, is this going to be more of a Jared Goff, Carson Wentz situation where 3-4 years from now, they're looking to trade Dak Prescott and hit that reset button? That's just the reality of the situation. So good for Dak, maybe not so good for the Cowboys, but we'll see. I'm excited to watch the Cowboys with Dak Prescott again. It was one of those don't always seem to know that you don't know what you got till it's gone situation. That offense was super fun with Dak Prescott. And we didn't even mention Mike McCarthy once in that rant. He got to go. Mike McFraud has got to go. If you're going to win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott making $40 million, that freaking dude cannot be your head coach. I'm sorry. He is a total fraud. So that's the next step here is when they go 7-9 this year and their defense is one of the worst in the NFL, who's coaching after Mike McFraud? I'll just leave it with that. All right, next up, I get to continue going on a rant here, which is what just makes my heart beat sometimes. I need to decompress. WTF New Orleans Saints. I don't even know where to start. I literally cannot explain this. I pride myself on explaining the NFL to people, being a football analyst. But when it comes to the New Orleans Saints and their salary cap, I cannot explain it. Nobody can explain it. Robert Mays, for example, I seeked him. He's really smart about the cap. Great football mind. One of my favorite podcasters. He couldn't explain it. And he put it best. I've said the same words he said 3 years ago, that it's a joke at this point. The New Orleans Saints, the cap does not exist. They franchise tagged Marcus Williams. Free safety for them. Still infamous for the Minneapolis Miracle. How? The math does not add up. 2 + 2 = chickens if you live in New Orleans. Holy crap, like they had, heading into the offseason, negative over $90 million. It was like 95, 96, like almost $100 million cap deficit. They already somehow, I understand, guys. I understand that you can renegotiate, you can kick the can down the road, as they say. They've been saying it about the freaking Saints since 2014, when they did not have any cap space and signed a player named Jarris Byrd. They did not have any cap space. They signed him. I said, how? I was a sophomore in college. I wasn't the biggest NFL fan, but I knew that was not right. That they had no cap space, and they still had one of the biggest free agent signings. And every year since 2014, they have retained their talent, given their top talent massive contract extensions, and not just that, they have signed like 2 free agents a year on top of all of that. Last year it was Emmanuel Sanders and what's his name? The safety from Philadelphia, Malcolm Jenkins. They added Jared Cook the year before that. It makes no sense. The math does not add up in New Orleans to the point that I am now, and this is hot takey, but it is so inexplicable that in the New Orleans Saints case, I do firmly believe that they are either lying about their books or they have discovered that the NFL actually, when you kick the can down the road, because they started doing it first, they started doing it in 2014. I think the Saints may have discovered that dead cap that you're supposed to push down the road, you borrow from the future, right? If the Saints were borrowing from the future, they would have been irrelevant 3 years ago because they've been doing this for 6 years and they've never had to pay for it. Never, not once have the Saints been like, oh no, we have to suffer this cap. They get everything they want. Free agents, re-signings, you name it. It doesn't matter in New Orleans. Cap doesn't exist in one state in this country. It's insane. But where was I? They placed the tag on Marcus Williams. So they had brought themselves down to $45 million in cap space. They had already cleared $50 million in cap space. And all they really did was release Jared Cook, some other lower level veterans. They haven't even released Quan Alexander yet, who was supposed to be the most obvious cap cut to clear $12 million. He's still there somehow. So they've cleared $50 million in cap space just by kicking the can down the road like they've been doing for 6 freaking years and never had to pay for it. And it seemed like they still had a ton of work to do, and they're still just yeah, we don't want to lose Marcus Williams. We're going to franchise tag him. So tomorrow they're probably going to trade for Russell Wilson and probably going to sign 3 more free agents. And somehow when the year starts, they're going to have their full team back. I'm looking at their depth chart right now. They have their entire team back. Drew Brees at this point might come back. I don't know. But I got so distracted there. I was talking about how they're getting away with this. There's either 2 things going on here. They're either lying about their numbers, or they discovered that when they're supposed to kick the can down the road, the NFL just doesn't actually record those things, and their cap space in the future just doesn't change. And the Saints are like, well, let's just keep doing it until they figure it out. So this is going to piss a lot of Saints fans off. Saints fans get salty about this. Just shut your mouth, Saints fans. Just enjoy it, because 31 out of 32 NFL teams are staring at you what? That's not right. There is something going on in New Orleans that is not right. And other teams have tried it, right? The Eagles, the Chiefs, but they've paid the piper. The Eagles right now are trying to get rid of Zach Ertz. They haven't been able to sign anyone. And the Chiefs really kind of pushed their limits. They just kind of squeezed Chris Jones in there, but they've had real cap penalties. They haven't been able to kind of pay for the team that they wanted last year. So my goodness, I'm to the point where I think this needs to be investigated. I'm not even kidding at this point. This does not make sense. 2 + 2 = chickens. The cap does not exist in New Orleans, and it's not okay. This does not add up. If this was 2 years of pushing the can down the road, and this was Philadelphia or Kansas City where they reached a point where they actually had to pay for this stuff and start letting star players leave like everybody else, then I'd be like, okay, that's fine. But in the Saints case, they've been doing this for 6 years. I remember sitting in my college apartment explaining to my roommates, this doesn't add up. How does this work? And they've been getting away with it for 6 years. So I'm sorry, Saints fans. This ain't right. It just isn't right. And I want to see something come of it. I want to see them either eventually have to pay for this cap hell and be like, crap, we have to release half our roster, or the NFL look into this and be like, wow, that was accounting fraud. Because that's really what this looks like, is Wolf on Wall Street, black money, illegal bookwork is really what this looks like from an outside looking in. It's what it's looked like for years. That's it. I'm not going to go any further. They're keeping Marcus Williams somehow. I think Drew Brees might be coming back now. He hasn't retired yet. There was a workout video of him last week. The Saints aren't that scary because they don't have a quarterback. Even if Drew Brees comes back, he just doesn't have it anymore. I don't think they're like a real Super Bowl threat next year, but this is just over the top, man. They were supposed to fall apart, and they aren't. And I don't know how they're going to... They have to clear $55 million in cap space before the season starts. And that's not even counting for all their draft picks. That's another, like, $9 million on top of all that. So, like, $64 million in cap space is just going to have to go disappear somehow. And the Saints will do it because I'm not going to say they cheat, but it's kind of what it looks like. So there's my Saints spiel. Let's move on to some of the player movement here. Isaiah Wilson, former first-round pick, was a big topic on the show a couple weeks ago. But if you missed the show, he's a first-round pick for the Tennessee Titans. Offensive tackle, was actually my number one guard in last year's class. Just because I think his footwork kind of stinks. His technique, not all that good. He's super young, super gifted, like talented dude. 6'6", 350 pounds, flies off the ball like nothing. Really good run blocker coming out of Georgia. But a really troubled rookie season for the Tennessee Titans. A DUI almost immediately. Come training camp, he was kind of fighting with the coaches and got team discipline, which usually means either late to practice, fighting with coaches, complaining about something. Hard to know exactly what was going on there. And then fast forward to like January, and there was a report where the team didn't know where he was. They'd gone 7 weeks without even hearing from Isaiah Wilson. A little bit after that, he tweets out or Instagram posts something that he's done playing football for the Tennessee Titans. And at the same day, he had released like his mixtape, which just like he's all over the place, right? Clearly his heart is not in the NFL, and he was not acting professional. And the Titans just were like, whatever. Like just like I said on the show 2 weeks ago, they have no plans for him. I said maybe they trade him for nothing, or they just see if he comes back. They don't want anything to do with this dude. He is just toxic for their culture. So they trade him to the Miami Dolphins for, they don't even trade him really. They swap 7th round picks, which is like 3 picks, I think, in the 7th round. It's actually kind of funny when you think about it. The Dolphins pick 19th and the Titans pick 22. So they moved up 3 spots in the 7th round for their first round pick last year. They gave him to Miami. They just, wow. Now, from Miami's perspective, it's a good move. They can bring him in, see how he works in the summer, and they owe him nothing. No guaranteed money. They didn't even really give up a pick for him. So, I mean, if he doesn't have his heart in it, he doesn't even have to make the team next year. So, great move for Miami, and it's one of these really high-reward, low-risk moves for them. And I think maybe it's possible that Wilson and the coaching staff in Tennessee just wasn't a match, whereas Miami much more familiar with kind of this rejuvenation sort of sparking guys that didn't have it. They had a completely depleted roster 2 years ago and have turned a lot of no names into quality players there. And I think Isaiah Wilson in that culture could definitely work, but I'm not saying it's likely. I mean, the guy, it's all on Isaiah Wilson. Like he has Hall of Fame athletic talent. He really does. 6'6", 350 pounds. He moves like Trent Williams, who's just one of the most athletic dudes. Like he if he puts it all together, could be an all-pro type of talent for the Miami Dolphins. Now, that's on him. He's got to work on that technique. He's got to show up. He's got to practice. He's got to put in the effort in the weight room. He's got to be in shape. He's got to be in football shape. So there's a lot of stuff to go, work on with Isaiah Wilson. But a great move for Miami. It's a huge need as well. Now, does this mean they don't draft Penei Sewell 3rd overall if he's there? Of course not. I don't want to see any Dolphins saying, like, we're good at tackle, we're good at guard, now we got Isaiah Wilson. Like, he is a sunk cost investment where you just got him for free. And if it works out, great. But you don't, as an organization, you don't bank anything on this kind of player. That's when you get hurt. So it does not change their draft strategy. It doesn't change their needs at all. He's a project prospect on the back end of their depth chart. And we'll see how it works out. That first round, staple on him will always be there because of those athletic traits. But he is not, in the Dolphins' mind, a first round investment. So hoping the best there for Miami. They desperately need some help on that offensive line. A little preview here. I've got a top 3 team needs for each team video coming out tomorrow is when I'm slated to drop that. So for the Dolphins, both guard and offensive tackles, spoiler alert, will be a part of that. But good move for Miami. For Tennessee, what a bust. He is right there in the last decade. He's right there with Trubisky, Bortles, Haskins, you name it. Like, he is a top 5 bust, at least of the last decade, maybe even top 10 all time. I mean, you don't see first round picks just not want to play football. Usually it's just they're bad. But Isaiah Wilson just he wasn't a pro. He wasn't a professional. He didn't show up. So we'll see what happens there. Sticking in the topic of offensive linemen, we've got Trent Brown getting traded to the New England Patriots. And this was a big surprise. I saw that there were some rumors that the Raiders were thinking about moving on from Trent Brown, which I didn't put a lot of stock in that because it just didn't make any sense. And it wouldn't be the first time the Raiders did something from a team-building standpoint that didn't make any sense. But Trent Brown is one of the best right tackles in football. He's one of the highest paid, for sure. But this was a big surprise for a lot of reasons. So there's a lot to dissect here. I want to start with it's kind of the good and the ugly in this trade, because the good side is the Patriots side. They gave up a 5th-round pick, maybe even a 6th-round pick, nothing. They gave up nothing to get him. They have cap space. And from the Patriots' perspective, by the way, Trent Williams that was his last team, was for the Patriots. So this is his second stint here, and Belichick's very familiar with this player. And Trent Brown was very happy to go back to New England, even though they're technically not as good of a football team, but he was very happy about this on Twitter. He was very audibly happy. I don't know what was going on, why he was so pissed. I guess there was some kind of incident with a team doctor, right? Didn't they kind of screw him over out of some games or something? So there was something going on with him and the Raiders that was butting heads. But anyway, total steal for the Patriots. They still have tons of cap space to build at quarterback, receiver, whatever it is. But that last piece in the offensive line here really was that tackle spot. They are getting Marcus Cannon back from an opt-out, but he's older. We don't know what he's going to look like after the opt-out. I think they might be able to release Marcus Cannon now, and basically, I think the cap is pretty similar. I think Marcus Cannon's pretty well paid. They can probably release Marcus Cannon and just replace him with Trent Brown, which is just mind-boggling. This is the first time Belichick, really since he traded for Trent Brown for a 3rd-round pick the first time from the San Francisco 49ers. So this is the second time he's going from the West Coast over to New England. But anyway, there's been this kind of falling from grace in New England. Tom Brady goes and wins a Super Bowl somewhere else. The Patriots, half their team opts out. They didn't plan for life after Tom Brady, and they were not good, right? Their offense stunk. The defense was not as good. No crowd noise. Tough year to play defense, all this stuff. And there's this kind of, dust on the organization, this rust, and it is not looking as good as it did just a year ago when Tom Brady was there. But I do think that this is going to be the beginning of sort of a redemption arc for Bill Belichick. I did think Tom Brady would be successful in Tampa Bay. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl in my preseason predictions. But I also thought the Patriots would be a little better than they were. And the opt-outs played a factor in that. And I would say just the offense as a whole just was kind of even worse than I expected. The defense really was not as good as I thought was, I think, the big change there. But anyway, Bill Belichick has spent 20 years doing stuff like this, and it's part of the Patriots dynasty. There's no 6 rings on Tom Brady's fingers without Belichick. There's no 6 Patriots rings on Belichick's fingers without Tom Brady. I think you don't get to 6 rings without a great coach and a great quarterback. And I think this year is going to be the start of seeing that great coach shine through again. I think last year there was a ton of circumstances that really left the Patriots to kind of rot. And it's not like they were terrible, right? They have the 15th pick in the draft. They were still an average team. I think if most teams in the league had what happened to them, they're hitting rock bottom. They're winning 3 or 4 games. So it's not like it was a complete train wreck. There were still some moments in there. But yeah, man, the Patriots, I think, are going to have a comeback here. This offensive line now, if they can get David Andrews back at center, he's slated for free agency. He didn't play last year. If they can get him back, you go left tackle. You have Isaiah Wynn, who's got to stay healthy, but he's a beast when he's out there. Left guard, Michael Onwenu. Don't sleep on him. He actually started at right tackle last year. He's 6'3". He was a guard at Michigan, was a mid-round pick, and was one of the best picks of the draft from a value steal perspective. He was insane, super good. So he's going to start at left guard with Tooney now hitting free agency. Someone's gonna be happy to pay Joe Tooney, by the way. At center, you hope you can get David Andrews back. I think he will return personally. They got the money for him. They're familiar with him. And he's kind of a risky signing right now because he was dealing with some sort of injury or something. So that's speculation there. But then right guard, you have Shaq Mason, who's one of the best guards in football. Can't forget about him. And now right tackle, we have one of the best right tackles in Trent Brown. You have a bruising running back in Damian Harris, who really looked good last year. So the run game is going to be great. The pass protection is going to be great. The offensive line play is going to be awesome. You now hopefully get Julian Edelman back healthy. You have Jacoby Myers there, who's a piece. You do get Marquise Lee back from the opt-out. And then maybe they go sign, Will Fuller, Kenny Golladay, Juju Smith-Schuster, something like that. I do think that's in play for the Patriots. And then the quarterback situation, honestly, with those improvements, whether it's Cam Newton or they trade for Marcus Mariota or they go get Mac Jones in the draft, I think the offense as a whole will be much better. Better playmakers, better offensive line, and that's not even talking about the defense that just by getting crowd noise back is going to help, but you're going to get the leader of that defense in the middle of the defense and Dante Hightower back. I like these young edge players that were a bit of a year one kind of project there, but Josh Uche and Anthony Jennings, Chase Winovich, those young edge guys are up-and-coming stars, I think, at least in that system. Maybe they bring Kyle Van Noy back as well. They need one more piece on that interior defensive line, but they're bringing the secondary back. I don't think they trade Stephon Gilmore. Maybe they do, but that secondary, that defense, I think will be back as a top 10 defense. And if you have a great running game, which they are projected to have, and even a Cam Newton who adds a number in the running game, and if you just get better playmakers for the receiving group, like a Juju Smith-Schuster and Cam Newton would be a great fit. Because Cam is good in the short to intermediate game. It's just the vertical passing game. So if you're a complete offense without a vertical passing game and a really good defense, I think the Patriots will be really sound next year. And this was, I think, the beginning of an exciting offseason for the New England Patriots. Because Belichick's not going to mess around. He's going to be 69 next year. So he's not trying to take his time with this rebuild. That's for damn sure. They got cap space. I think that last year was kind of a wasted season, or just an off year for them. And he's talked about that too, where they didn't have a great plan for Tom Brady. But anyway, I'm rambling. Let's get back to the Raiders for a second. What the hell? What the hell are the Raiders doing? What is wrong with their front office? Even Bill O'Brien was right occasionally. When have the Raiders been right other than Darren Waller, who was basically like an Isaiah Wilson-esque dart throw that, John Gruden's a good coach. I like John Gruden as a coach. I've said that countless times. He's the kind of coach that can revive a Darren Waller. But from a team-building standpoint in the John Gruden era, they've been the worst run front office in the league. It's not even close. I mean, Houston's close, but even Houston was right occasionally. But, oh, man. This is painful to look at. And I've beaten this point into the dirt, but it keeps getting worse and worse. It goes back to the Khalil Mack trade and the Amari Cooper trades. The process behind it wasn't that bad. I do think they sold Khalil Mack overnight when they didn't need to. They could have gotten way more. I mean, worse players than Khalil Mack have fetched more value than the Raiders got, right? The Raiders, they got a first-round pick, and then they traded their second-round pick for the Bears' next year's first. So they got a pick swap, right? They didn't even get 2 full first-round picks for Khalil Mack. That gets underrated. The Raiders' pick was like 50th, and the Bears' pick was like 25th. So, like, they didn't even, and when you look at the pick value chart that teams go off of, there's not even a huge difference between a late first and a mid-second. There's a difference, but it's not getting a full first-round pick. It's not even close. So they sold Khalil Mack overnight. Since then, we've seen Jamal Adams, Jalen Ramsey, 2 full first-round picks. That was the value for Khalil Mack. So they already kind of screwed that up a little bit. But the point of doing that was they wanted cap space to build a better roster. And they wanted picks. So what did they do with that? And Amari Cooper as well. They traded him away. They didn't want to give him a long-term contract. They didn't think he was worth it. They got a first-round pick for him. Fine, right? We saw the Vikings do that with Stephon Diggs, a similar caliber player. It worked out for them because they drafted a valuable position in Justin Jefferson and replaced him. What have the Raiders done with that $45 million in cap space that they cleared up and those draft picks that they got? Well, the cap space, they signed LaMarcus Joyner to play out of position, who they're going to release this year. They signed Tyrell Williams, who did virtually nothing for them. They just released him. They signed that linebacker, Tahir Whitehead, to like $8 million. They've made a bunch of really bad free agent signings. They signed Trent Brown, who they just gave away. So all of that cap space was for nothing. You lost two of the best players at premium positions, edge, wide receiver, to clear up cap space that you misused. And then those draft picks, they took Clelin Ferrell, who was a late first, early second round prospect with a low upside, to replace Khalil Mack. Miserable decision. And they drafted Jonathan Abrams, who is a box safety, had no business going in the first round pick, decent player, but a completely devalued position. You don't trade a receiver for a box safety. And actually, they ended up trading the Khalil Mack, the true first rounder that they got, they used on a running back. So they're giving away valuable positions, misspending the money that they created, and then the picks that they got for those guys, they're spending on really invaluable positions. And they're sitting here and they still don't have a defense. They now have a gaping hole at right tackle and right guard and left guard. They went from one of the best offensive lines about 400 days ago to now gaping holes across the board on the offensive line. That's not going to bode well for Derek Carr, who's a pocket quarterback. And now, so, God, this is so frustrating. I would be so pissed if I was a Raiders fan. Because this team has a chance. They have a coach. They have a decent quarterback. They have playmakers. They have Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, Henry Ruggs. They got some pieces. But they aren't going anywhere if they keep team building like this. It's a disaster. I believe that this is the worst run front office in the NFL currently. And I thought maybe this offseason John Gruden would take a look in the mirror and fix this thing. Trading Trent Brown is not a great start. I get that he wasn't happy, but figure it out. Don't just I feel like this was Gruden's ego, just being like, oh, I can find another right tackle. I don't care that you're mad at me, Trent Brown. I'll send you to the Patriots. Go have fun there. Well, good job, Gruden. You just helped out an AFC opponent that's probably going to be competing with you for a wild card spot. I wouldn't be stunned if the Raiders and the Patriots in week 17 or whatever are fighting for that last spot, and the Patriots get it because they have better line play. So the Raiders are a complete mess. They continue to... I try to like them. I really do, because I like Gruden as a coach. I love Darren Waller. I like Josh Jacobs, although I didn't love the pick of Josh Jacobs. I try to like them. They're a fun team to watch. But it's so frustrating because they're just shooting themselves in the foot constantly by not team building the right way. So that whole thing was really fascinating. And then speaking of comebacks with the Patriots kind of making a comeback this year, one last bit of news here before we get into the franchise tag stuff. Kyle Long is coming out of retirement, which is intriguing. There is an interesting list of guards hitting free agency, and Kyle Long is one of those guys. I always liked Kyle Long a lot. Now, he suffered a ton of injuries. He clearly needed time to retire and get healthy, but he wanted to come back and play football. Great bloodlines. Chris Long is his brother, I think, who's on the podcast for The Ringer. But he's an interesting piece. I think it reminds me of when Richie Incognito kind of came back, speaking of the Raiders. I think he's going to be a value signing, and whoever gets him, I'm going to go like, ooh. And it's going to be a team. It's going to be like the Bucs or the Chiefs, maybe the Bills or the Packers. It's going to be one of these teams that's there. He's not coming out of this to go, win 6 games next year. He's going to go play for one of these championship teams. Maybe the Seahawks or the Rams would be another team to look out for, but There's a lot of teams that could use a starting guard. He's a guy that in his prime was a really good athlete. He can run some of these outside zone schemes. So I'm very intrigued in the comeback of Kyle Long to kind of come out and ring chase a little bit. I don't think the Bears have his rights. I think he is a free player. I think he was a free agent when he retired. So keep an eye on Kyle Long, kind of a sneaky story there, and I think he's going to be a pretty good player. We've now seen a couple guys at this position. I mentioned Richie Incognito, but Kaleki Asemele is another guy that kind of disappeared and then came back. He did suffer an injury for the Chiefs, but he was kicking ass when he came in there. So keep an eye on some of those championship teams to take a shot on Kyle Long. It could be a really nice signing. All right, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, I'm going to get into the sort of franchise tag. We already talked about Marcus Williams for the Saints a little bit, but just going to talk about some of the more surprising franchise tags and some of the teams that I think screwed up the franchise tag deadline, and then I'm going to wrap with the mailbags. So we'll be right back. So there was, I think, 9 players that got franchise tagged. I'm not actually going to talk about all of the ones that got tagged because some of them were a little more obviously. Taylor Moton for the Panthers. But, if I don't talk about it, I agree with the tag. And a lot of these guys, it was just a placeholder so they can work out long-term deals as well, like Justin Simmons for Denver. Well worth a full contract extension. I think they'll get that deal done. But there's 3 guys that did receive the tag that I at least have an opinion on. And then there was actually, I think, 3 players and 3 teams that really screwed up by not using the franchise tag. That are 3 guys that I think are quite possibly the 3 most significant free agents hitting the market. So just have some thoughts and frankly some concerns on the franchise tag and how that all played out. So the 3 guys that got the tag that I want to talk about are Allen Robinson, another former Jaguar Robinson, Cam Robinson, and Chris Godwin getting the franchise tag instead of pass rusher Shaq Barrett for the Bucs. So let's start with Allen Robinson. I actually thought that he was going to hit the market mainly just because the Bears, they don't seem to value Allen Robinson for what he is. They're not very appreciative of him. I don't know why they haven't paid him. If you want to talk about feeling bad for the players and the franchise tag sucking, Allen Robinson should be paid, not from Robinson perspective, from the frickin' Bears perspective. He's been the only good offensive player for you since you've had Mitchell Trubisky, and if you can't tell how good he is, even despite the quarterback play, that's on you. Pay the guy. I get that. Now, I don't have any sympathy for Allen Robinson. He hit the market before. He probably should have been tagged by Jacksonville. And they didn't. And he hit the market, and he chose to go play with Mitch Trubisky instead of either Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay or Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. So, he chose this team, and he feels kind of stuck here right now. So I don't, feel bad for him. But at the same time, I actually was expecting him to hit the market just because I didn't think the Bears valued him like this. But, it was a great move for the Bears. Don't get me wrong. They shouldn't lose Allen Robinson for nothing. It'd be a huge mistake. He's, all they have on offense right now. So this does change my outlook on the Bears a little bit because I was actually projecting them without Allen Robinson. And all of a sudden, that receiving core is back to being kind of a sneaky good receiving core. It's just a matter of getting that freaking quarterback figured out. So good for the Bears, good move for them. I hope that this is like Justin Simmons and some of these teams and they work out a deal here. I don't think Allen Robinson hates it in Chicago necessarily. He just wants a long-term contract. So I hope they pay him for his sake. But I was a little bit surprised by that. I was actually projecting that he was going to hit the market. Now, another one that really just kind of came out of left field was Cam Robinson for the Jacksonville Jaguars, a left tackle. And my initial thought was okay, that makes sense. People were kind of shredding this because he's not a very good football player. He's maybe a top 25 left tackle. That's cutting it. He is a fringe starter. He's a really nice athlete. Kind of had a fall in the draft. He's yoked. He's super strong. He packs a punch. He's a good run blocker. But yeah, as a pass protector, he's just kind of stiff. He's actually a lot like Alex Leatherwood coming out of the draft right now for Bama. So it was a bit of a surprise that they used the tag on him, but it made a ton of sense. immediately, because the Jags have an unlimited pool of resources. And if you just let him go, there's no guarantee that, A, you can attract a better option in free agency. There's only maybe 4 options that are actually better than Cam Robinson in free agency. Like Trent Williams, I don't think wants to go here. Darrell Williams maybe would be an option, but he's more of a right tackle than a left tackle. There's just not a lot of great options in free agency. So they said, we'll tag him. That by no means that they can't draft a tackle or that the guy that they draft won't start over him, but it's a 1-year commitment. Cam Robinson's going to be fine with it because that's good money for him. And for a team that is looking to add talent and not lose talent, I did think it made sense. It's not like going to change what free agents they're able to go after. They're not going to spend all of the money that they had. So it made sense to me. You have a rookie quarterback coming in, Trevor Lawrence. It's better than nothing to have Cam Robinson there. They're going to look for greener pastures, but that's definitely, I thought, a solid use of the franchise tag. That, to me, that's the kind of player that should be getting the franchise tag, not Allen Robinson. If you want Allen Robinson, just work out a deal, And if he doesn't want to be there, tag him and trade him. If you're a superstar player like that. In Cam Robinson's case, it's that's more money than he's going to get next year if he hits the market. And he's not going to, 99.99%, he's not going to have a career-ending injury on this thing. So, this is an example of the franchise tag helping a team like Jacksonville who's looking to build something. So it's not always bad with the franchise tag. And then Chris Godwin gets the franchise tag for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Definitely wasn't surprising to me. This, to me, was the right call. But all indications were that they were probably going to use that on Shaq Barrett. But this I think, it was the right call for the Bucks. And Barrett was a better player than Godwin was last year. And I think Barrett, was a bigger reason that they won the Super Bowl last year than Chris Godwin. In fact, Chris Godwin was actually kind of poor in the playoffs. But this is a league of projecting forward. And it's also looking at the value here. And both these are valuable positions, but Chris Godwin is a 26-year-old superstar receiver coming off a down year. And they knew that if Chris Godwin hits the market, he is getting the Amari Cooper contract. They're very similar caliber players. He's getting 5 years, $100 million. And that was going to be tough for them to really compete if he hit the open market. Shaq Barrett, on the other hand, he doesn't have the reputation around the league that Chris Godwin does. It's not that he's disliked. It's not that other teams won't be interested. But if the goal here was to keep Chris Godwin, Levante David, and Shaq Barrett, and one of those 3 guys had to hit the market, well, Levante David kind of worked out a good deal with them, and that was kind of a different case. He was going to be back regardless. But between Chris Godwin and Shaq Barrett, if one of these guys had to hit the market, the league was hoping it was going to be Chris Godwin, and the Bucks were smart to make it Shaq Barrett. So they're going to have a hard time making this work financially. If they want to pay Shaq Barrett, I think they probably have to release Donovan Smith. We'll see how creative they can get. Maybe they are the New Orleans Saints and it just doesn't matter. But I do think this was smart. I think Chris Godwin will get more in the open market than Shaq Barrett will. Because I don't think the league, even though Shaq Barrett led the league in sacks a year ago and led the edge group in pressures last year and was awesome in the playoffs, I still don't think the league has totally grown up from Shaq Barrett being the, 1-year veteran minimum signing that he was 2 years ago. Typically, you will see a regression to the mean with a player like Shaq Barrett. Not that he won't be a good player moving forward, but I don't think projecting forward, teams are looking at Shaq Barrett as, especially outside of this system that's been really good and uses Shaq Barrett in the way that he can stunt as a stand-up outside linebacker in this blitz-heavy scheme, which is really effective for his skill set. But I don't think the league looks at Shaq Barrett, even compared to guys like Matt Judon and Yannick Ngakoue and Carl Lawson, who we're actually going to talk about in just a second. I actually think the league would look at that group and say, I'd rather have Carl Lawson, I'd rather have Yannick Ngakoue, and then I'd pay Shaq Barrett. So I think by hitting the market, the Bucks are almost in kind of a conniving way being like, yeah, Shaq, we want to keep you, but you're not worth maybe quite as much as, you think you are, and it actually could be kind of 3D chess here from the Bucs, because they know Chris Godwin, he gone. If he hits the market, he's going to get way more money than the Bucs can maintain. So they're going to, I think, tag him and maybe see how the Shaq Barrett things plays out, and then give Godwin a long-term extension there. Because projecting forward, Godwin had a rough year, but I think he's going to be just fine. He is a stud of a receiver. We're just a year removed from thinking he might be a top 5 receiver in the NFL. Whereas Shaq Barrett, I think the Bucs are being a little conniving here. They're being like, look, Shaq, we love you. We want to bring you back. Go test the market. You want $22, $23 million? You want to get paid like Joey Bosa and Myles Garrett? Go try. Go see what happens. And I don't think there's a team in the league that wants to pay Shaq Barrett, especially this year, that much money. Now, they might pay him $16, $17 million, but then that's when the Bucs come back to Shaq and say, okay, you're worth $17 million to the Jaguars are a bad example, but maybe the Indianapolis Colts. Do you want to go play for them, or do you want to come back here for 15 and win another Super Bowl? I think that's kind of the game the Bucs are playing. The Bucs front office, it has ascended so quickly to being just masterful. What's the GM's name? Leach, right? Or give me one second. I always screw up his name. I want to make sure I get this right. It starts with Matt Light. 1 second. Bucs GM. It's Jason Light. He is crushing it, man. He's only 50 years old too. He is ascending to the likes of Ballard in Indianapolis. Like, so much respect. I think this is exactly how they should have played it. Get that kind of team-friendly hometown discount with Levante David, which he got. He's only a $3.5 million cap hit next year. Insane. They did like 3 void years. They did some crazy cap stuff and pulled it off. And then you got, the tagging of Chris Godwin, smart. And I actually think by kind of letting Shaq Barrett kind of learn a tough love lesson on, like, he's not quite worth what he thinks he is around the league. He might be worth $20 million to the Bucs, but I don't think the league looks at him that way. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he gets paid $20 million and they actually lose Shaq Barrett. But I think they're going to be able to make this work. With the tag for Godwin, I think they could work out a contract extension that actually is a cheaper hit earlier, just like they did with David, and then maybe do it with Shaq Barrett as well. But I think they're going to be able to, keep the boys in town there. And the Bucs are going to be freaking loaded next year. So I thought that was a great move, tagging Godwin. The league is sad about it. The league wanted Chris Godwin to hit the market because receivers like him just don't hit the market. Him and Allen Robinson, case in point. They're both from that same draft class, who I really liked. Right? Or Godwin and Golladay were in the same draft class. Robinson would have been a year ahead of those guys. Or maybe I'm just way off, and Robinson was way before. I think I'm wrong there. But anyway, all third round picks though. Okay, so there's 3 teams that I think really screwed up and should have used the franchise tag and didn't. Number 1 is the Lions with Kenny Golladay. We just talked about not letting receivers hit the market. Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, they got tagged. You don't let a player like that in his prime at a premium position who's going to get paid $20+ million hit the market. Now, I get it. Golladay probably was ready to go. He probably didn't want to, come to an extension. He probably wanted to go somewhere else. And honestly, just tagging him 2 years in a row and making him unhappy for a team that's not going to win right now. I understand the complications there, but tag and trade him. Do something with it. Don't just let him go and get a 3rd round pick next year. Golladay is worth way more than that. So I think the Lions kind of made it yet another mistake there. I understand Golladay would have been kind of unhappy if he got the tag, but figure it out again. So the Lions just kind of being the Lions there. And part of that is their organization is such a dysfunction that they don't have the power to tag him and work it out. Even in Allen Robinson's case, at least they've made the playoffs in 2 out of 3 years, and, you can consider re-signing him if you give him enough money. Whereas Golladay probably just didn't want to be there. But again, figure it out. I think Detroit is just losing a ton of value. He's the best pick they've had in the last few years. And then the other team, there's two more teams, but the Green Bay Packers did not use the franchise tag on Corey Linsley. And not Aaron Jones. I don't care about Aaron Jones. That was all the talk when the Packers didn't use a franchise tag. It's like, oh my God, they're letting Aaron Jones go. I hope Aaron Jones goes and gets $60 million, $40 guaranteed for the Miami Dolphins, and, has generational wealth. He's well-deserved it. 6th-round pick, has busted his ass to become one of the best running backs in the league. For the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Jones is not worth paying anything north of $5 million. They have an excellent offensive line. They had Corey Linsley. They have a great scheme that schemes these guys up. I think they could actually get better at running back through the draft with a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I think there's a chance that, say, a Kenneth Gainwell, or even if they wanted to go, I wouldn't do it myself, but like a Travis Etienne. Like, I think there's higher upside options that will be available to the Packers for a lot cheaper than paying Aaron Jones. So I like Aaron Jones. I hope he gets paid. But to be honest, I think Aaron Jones is going to be the worst free agent signing from a team perspective this offseason. But letting Corey Linsley go, I can't remember a team letting a first-team All-Pro offensive lineman just leave. I think it's a terrible mistake. I don't care how they have to clear the cap space. I don't care if you release Preston Williams. I don't really care what they have to do. I don't care if you have to renegotiate a contract, kick the can down the road into a year that has more cap space. The fact that the Packers could not figure this out in a year where the freaking Saints are tagging Marcus Williams when they're $45 million of the cap space. Marcus Williams is not nearly as meaningful to the Packers as Corey Linsley is. And I get that they've had a good track record of developing these guys, but it's just another example of the Packers being overly conservative, worried about the future, not going in. You have Rodgers coming off an MVP season. Go for once in your goddamn life, Green Bay Packers. Go for a Super Bowl. Figure it out. Keep your first-team All-Pro center instead of rolling the dice that your 5th-round pick from last year is going to step it up. Even if it's just a franchise tag, which is a 1-year thing, Corey Linsley would have played on the tag. He would have survived 1 year on the franchise tag, getting paid a good amount of money. So he's going to hit the market. Someone's going to be thrilled to get Corey Linsley. It's either going to be, I think, like the Chargers are a great spot, the Ravens. Someone is going to steal Corey Linsley from the Packers. And it's going to be just another example of the Packers letting a great player go when they shouldn't have. So just another freaking screw-up from the Packers. This is the one thing that I thought they needed to do, was keep Corey Linsley. That offensive line was their best asset last year, and it just got a lot worse. So good job, Green Bay. They also let Ricky Wagner. They released Ricky Wagner. Why? So you can let Corey Linsley go too? Like, I understand that they're over the cap. Every team is over the cap. The Bucs are dealing with a bunch of cap stuff. They just re-signed Levante David, kept Chris Godwin. The Saints, the Chiefs last year figured out a way to keep Chris Jones. You figure out a way to keep your good players. And the Packers just aren't willing to do it. They aren't willing to kick the can into the future or, whatever it is. They trust their process of draft and development. How great has that worked out for the Packers over the last 10 years? So, huge mistake letting Corey Linsley go. Someone is going to reap the benefits of Green Bay's just malpractice here. And then, maybe the worst is the Bengals letting Carl Lawson out the door. Carl Lawson's one of the most underrated players in the league. I think Carl Lawson and Jesse Bates on the Bengals, these two guys have a case to be two of the most underrated players in the league. Carl Lawson was sneakily one of the best, most efficient edge rushers in the league last year. Now, he's a bit of a, how do I want to say it, like pass rush specialist. Not that he can't play run defense, but he's a guy that does have a serious injury history, and he's best utilized when you only give him 400 snaps in a season, right? Kind of like D Ford, but a better version of D Ford. More power, more creativity as a pass rusher. So like a guy that you don't want him playing every snap because you're worried that he might get injured. And the Bengals kind of figured that out. They drafted some of these bigger edge rushers, Sam Hubbard. They had Dunlap there for a while. They drafted Adeniji or something like that. I think it was Hakeem Adeniji out of Notre Dame to play kind of that early down run defense role, and just let Carl Lawson loose on 2nd and long, 3rd downs. So whoever signs him, that's how you should plan to use him. You don't You don't want this guy playing 1,000 snaps. That is asking for trouble because he does have that injury red flag. But he has been able to stay much healthier than people expected. His tape coming out of Auburn, that was my first class. And yes, I liked Nathan Peterman in that class. But Carl, a lot of guys on this list are bringing me back to my first year as a YouTuber because I loved Godwin and I loved Kenny Golladay and I loved Carl Lawson. And those were like some of my dudes in my first mock drafts. I was taking Golladay and Godwin and Carl Lawson like top 50 in the draft. So like I at least got some of those right. And I don't think I'm being biased here. A lot of people really like Carl Lawson. His tape was incredible. It was just his injuries were a concern, and he's been able to stay more healthy than people expected. And you're always going to be worried about it, but I just think Carl Lawson is going to go to a team like Indianapolis, who really needs pass rush help, maybe a Seattle, but I don't know if they can afford him. I think Carl Lawson's going to get a huge contract. I think he's going to get paid more than Shaq Barrett gets. I would at least pay him more than Yannick Ngakoue, Matt Judon. I just think his skill set is unparalleled to the pass rushers in this class. He is explosive, he's powerful, he's a technician, he's got it all as a pass rusher. And he's just been under the radar for the Bengals for years. So letting him go is a mistake because once he hits the market and he sees the money he's going to get, they're not going to be able to get him back. And you already lost Dunlap, you traded him away, and all of a sudden that D-line that just a year ago had Lawson, Dunlap, Hubbard, Geno Atkins, it's all gone. And at some point, you do need a defense for Joe Burrow because that defense has been soft and squishy for the last couple of years. They have some work to do on offense, but just the line play in general for Cincinnati just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So I think that was probably the biggest mistake is letting him out the building because someone's going to be a huge winner there. So Corey Linsley, Kenny Golladay, Carl Lawson, all different situations, but I think all situations where the team should have used the tag in one way or another, figured out either a trade for the player, get something for him, or figure out the cap to make it work with like Corey Linsley. So let's go ahead and open up the mailbag to wrap up the show. I don't actually know how many mailbag questions I have here, but let's see. So again, the show is brought to you by Patreon. My Patreon is patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where you can get access to the mailbagger. I'm seeing 20 questions, so let's get into it. Probably going to be a lot of questions that I gloss over because I'm sure a lot of stuff coming in recently from the stuff that we just talked about, all the franchise tag stuff. So from Chris Hain, thoughts on Waddle and Smith both choosing Mac Jones over Tua? Is that just an attempt to make sure that Jones gets his spot in the draft, or is there more to that? I think there's more to it. I don't want to look like too far into it, but I mean, there's just kind of red flags all over the place with Tua. Even the Dolphins players kind of threw Tua under the bus too. So you now have the pro players, his college players, just kind of saying he's not all that, which was kind of my takeaway watching him play. Like, he's fine, but he's not all that. And I think they're right. I think Mac Jones, in my what I would do mock drafts, I've been taking Mac Jones higher than I was willing to take Tua last year. I'll just say that. I wish I had my grading scale to clearly compare these guys as far as like my grades on these guys, but man, I'm just not sold on Tua, man. If Zach Wilson's there at 3, you got to take Zach Wilson. Carter says, if I wanted to submit a mailbag question, would I just submit it here? Yes, you would, Carter. Send those mailbag questions through the DMs if you're new on Patreon. The creator page is a little wonky, so make sure you do it through the DMs. Okay, from Jonah. I've heard a lot of podcast analysts talking about how linebackers are not a valuable position in the modern NFL. I don't think I've really heard you touch on the value of linebacker. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a couple things going on with linebacker. It's not that it's not valuable. I think linebackers can be that last kind of missing piece to a great defense. And it's all also like the scheme you're talking about matters too. Because a lot of schemes will bring those kind of safeties down and play more of that linebacker role on like passing downs, and then all of a sudden the coverage becomes less valuable. So like a run defending linebacker is so easy to find. That's why I was never big on Blake Martinez, because it's like, He's not a good cover player. There's no denying he's bad in coverage. But, like, as a run defender, yeah, he racks up tackles, but he doesn't do anything that 50 other linebackers can't do. Just because a run defending linebacker, it's not like you don't need, like, a freak athlete, and you don't need to be, like, the smartest guy in the world. You just need to be able to see the ball, run down, and tackle the guy. Like, there's a lot of athletes in the world coming out of college that can do that. So it kind of depends, like, what kind of linebacker you're talking about, what kind of system you're talking about. Now, there's teams that if you can get a true 3-down linebacker that's good in run defense, that doesn't get bodied in between the trenches, that also covers, talking about a select few, Fred Warner, Eric Kendricks, Levante David, Bobby Wagner, the top 4. And then there's kind of a tier 2 of guys like Darius Leonard, Miles Jack, Roquan Smith. There's kind of a tier 2 there. If you can get one of those guys, very valuable player. I think those guys can consistently impact the play. But the in general linebacker, you're either looking at a guy that doesn't have insane, like take, now I think Patrick Queen has a chance to turn into a better player, but take Patrick Queen, for example, and compare him to, say, Jonathan Abrams or Patrick Chung for the Patriots. If you're smart, you can just take, or John Johnson for the Rams, you can just take an athletic safety who's just as good at thumping as like a Patrick Queen, who has much better like coverage IQ, understands route concepts better, quicker hips to flip in man coverage. So like if you're Patrick Queen and he's really bad against the run, like there's not a huge difference between that and a box safety, like a Keanu Neal or something like that. So it's just tough. If you're not one of those top guys, I think there's a lot of replaceable linebackers in the NFL. And just what these guys are asked to do, a lot of schemes don't put a lot of like tough assignments on these linebackers. So again, it just comes down to the team you're talking about. Some systems put a lot of value in a linebacker to play the middle of the field, get depth in your drops, take out stuff underneath, and be able to thump. Other systems, like New England, for example, a lot of 3-4 teams, you're just not gonna put a lot of weight in that linebacker position. The other side of this is it's one of the hardest positions to learn and become an elite player at. Roquan Smith took 3 years to just get into that conversation. Miles Jack, same thing. It's even if you're a freak athlete, Isaiah Simmons, great example, didn't really make an impact year 1. Patrick Queen. There's a longer and longer list of guys like if you are investing in that spot, you need to expect a learning curve, which I think is going to push down some of these linebackers as we go too. All right, from the NBA Kingdom, is Tua better than Burrow? Oh, my friends think Tua is better than Burrow. How do I convince him he's an idiot? Oh, God. Yeah, man. Exit. Hit the exit button on that conversation. It's not even close. I don't even know what the case is for Tua over Burrow. Not to totally dunk on Tua. You guys are the ones coming with the questions, but I mean, come on. It's not even close. From Jay Jonathan, how would you value the tag and trade options for wide receivers? What would you give up if you were a GM for, say, Allen Robinson or even Chris Godwin? Well, Chris Godwin, I'd give up 2 firsts to go get Chris Godwin. I mean, I think the world of Chris Godwin. I know he had a down year, but I think the absolute world of Chris Godwin. Allen Robinson, I'd give up a first and a third. I think Godwin is more athletic, better separator. Although, I mean, they're both just awesome. The value's not too different. The difference is I don't think the Bucs have any interest in trading Chris Godwin. I think the Bears would listen. If they could get a first round, I don't think they would trade Allen Robinson for a second, but if they could get, say the Patriots' 15th pick or something like that, or, I don't know, the Ravens' 26th pick or something like that, if they could get the Stephon Diggs trade for Allen Robinson, I think you'd probably do it, and I think there's a lot of teams that would make a lot of sense for. And that's another reason why you tag Kenny Golladay. Shop him on the market. So, yeah, I think first round value for those guys for sure. I think the Bears, if you could get a first round pick, because they're trying to get Deshaun Watson, they're trying to put a package together for the Texans. If they could add another first round pick, because players aren't going to want to go to Houston. If Allen Robinson gets traded to Houston, he's probably just going to wait. He's probably just going to hold out, I would think. But if they get a first round pick, you get a rookie in there who doesn't really have any leverage, then he's going to end up playing for Houston and kind of build that culture up. So Houston just wants picks, The Bears want Watson. Reports are the Bears are like offering all of their drafts for Deshaun Watson. So I think that'd be something to consider. If you could get like the Ravens' first round pick for Allen Robinson, and then you use that to go and get Watson potentially, would be obviously great for the Bears. From Wyatt, what should the Cowboys' main priority be in the draft if they're able to bring Dak back? So this is a little late, but obviously Dak is coming back. I mean, it's either secondary, but in my I just did a viewer mock draft, and the guy who was doing the Cowboys actually took Rashawn Slater. And now that the Dak thing is out of the way, taking one of these tackles, whether it's Slater or Darisaw, makes a little bit of sense. Not that I would take him over like Patrick Surtain, but I do think corner and safety are a little bit more replaceable. You can maybe get that in the second round. The tackle's a little harder depending on how many go. But looking ahead, Tyron Smith is going to be a casualty here at some point. He has a hard time staying healthy. I think they can let him go for minimal cap hit. They're going to need to start making some moves with the cap. So if you could get a Rashawn Slater, maybe you start him at left guard for a year and then kick him back out to tackle, that actually would be a pretty good move. Because in reality, they're probably not picking in the top 10 again. It's not going to be so easy to get a starting caliber tackle in the future. This might be their best chance to get that long-term answer at tackle, and he'd be cheap, which is getting creative with the cap is going to be a big deal. Corner, while it's important and a glaring need, I do think you could maybe get, say, a Greg Newsome or an Eric Stokes in the second, and then maybe you could get another safety in the third round. I think those are positions that are easier to hit on later, whereas tackle, it's much more difficult. So keep an eye on that offensive line, tackle for the Cowboys, because I don't think Tyron Smith is in their long-term plans at the moment. So I'd say the tackle, corner, really just tackle and corner in the first, and then maybe safety in the second and third. From Costa, if the Broncos took Mac Jones in the first round, how would I view the move? He writes more, but I guess I'll finish the question. Moreover, if they do this, could they take an athletic linebacker and safety to develop behind Kareem Jackson? Yeah, linebacker and safety, second, third round for the Broncos makes a ton of sense. Those are needs for them. Mac Jones to the Broncos, I wouldn't hate it. I would be more excited about the Broncos with Mac Jones than I am with Drew Lock. It's just not like super exciting. But if you think with Vic Fangio, you can get them back to a great defense. You have these receivers who, I mean, Mac Jones could be really productive in that offense. So, like, I think that's, as a day one impact, I think that's better than Lance. Fields probably won't be there anyway. They slice it. I'd be fine with it. I wouldn't be like, oh my God, amazing fit, like they're going to the Super Bowl. But it'd be solid. You do worse, I think. Like Drew Lock would be worse than Mac Jones, I think. All right, from Justin. How would you rank the top 10-ish 2020 running back prospects now that they've played a full season compared to my pre-draft? All right, that's a good question. Let me pull up my 2020 board and see how I did with the running backs. So obviously no one had James Robinson super high. I had a sixth round of priority free agent grade on James Robinson. But to my credit, a lot of fantasy owners that listen to this show won a lot of leagues because I said grab James Robinson. He can play, and no one on the Jags is going to take that job. And I actually predicted that they were going to release Leonard Fournette. So I will take credit for that because that was a great take. Even if he wasn't a top 10 back, no one had him as a top 10 back. So I at least want to point that out before we look at this. So my top 10 backs were Swift 1, Taylor 2, Clyde Edwards-Helaire 3, Dobbins 4, Zach Moss 5, McFarland 6, Cam Akers 7, Darrington Evans 8, A.J. Dillon 9, Antonio Gibson 10. So obviously you have to slide James Robinson up to number 1, I think. I think James Robinson's the best of this group. He's awesome. It was just a hidden gem playing at Illinois. What was it? Northern Illinois State or Illinois State? So I think, is number one. I don't know if you project him as number one moving forward just because of like upside. Let's project with upside. I think I'm still moving forward gonna take. Jags fans aren't gonna like this, but I would still take DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, and Antonio Gibson ahead of James Robinson. I'm sorry. I like James Robinson, but James Robinson probably fifth there behind those four guys. So obviously I missed on Gibson a little bit. I was a little lower on Gibson. Jags fans are going to hate me for that. It's the same thing that Broncos fans did to me when I wasn't super high on Phillip Lindsay. He went undrafted for a reason. He's not a superb athlete. He had a great year. He was a high-volume guy. He's a really good back. I like him a lot. But some of these guys, their athletic traits are just going to shine through eventually. So I would re-rank it. Let's just say moving forward, like who would I take? Like re-ranking the class. Honestly, man, I feel really good about Cam Akers. Maybe it's just because he's on the Rams, though. So that's a little unfair. Looking back at it, I'm kind of bummed that I wasn't higher on Cam Akers because a lot of people were a lot higher. I had a fourth round grade on him, but that's also running backs. This is tough. Running backs is always tough because there's so many different skill sets, but Swift was a little underwhelming. Taylor was good. Taylor's in the top 3 for sure. Gibson's definitely looking good. All right, let's just get on with it. I think non-committal, I'm going to go Cam Akers 1. I just have a really good feeling about his upside. Jonathan Taylor 2. Gibson 3. Swift 4. James Robinson 5. Then I would go Edwards-Helaire 6, who wasn't bad. Then I guess A.J. Dillon 7, who Dillon could be really good for the Packers, by the way, with Aaron Jones leaving. Those are 7 really good backs. Then Dobbins 8. I'm not as high on Dobbins. I think he's really good. It's a really good running back class looking back on it. I go Dobbins 8. And then I guess Zach Moss 9 and McFarland, we just didn't get to see a lot of him, so I think he could still be pretty good. So I had JaMycal Hasty at 11, which was kind of a good call. I'm just kind of looking through this. Maybe Josh Kelly would sneak above JaMycal. Yeah, probably Josh Kelly. I got to bump him up. But I think I did pretty solid. Lower on Cam Akers. But yeah, there's my re-ranking them. Okay, from Vedant, saw something about how Shaq Barrett only played good when Vita Vea was on the field. I don't know if I buy that. I think that's more coincidence. I mean, Vita Vea definitely opened some things up, and they can do some good stunts. You know, we talked about Shaq Barrett, how I think he's not like some elite edge rusher. So I guess I could buy a little bit of it, but I think he's good on his own. It's not like he's only good when Vita Vea is on the field. There's a mailbag question. I saw this coming with Isaiah Wilson. Like, absolutely not to this question. With the Dolphins trading for Isaiah Wilson, is that them basically saying they don't want to take a tackle at 3? God, no, absolutely not. No. It's them saying, let's throw a dart because we can get this guy for free. And it's a position of need. It's not in any way them saying we're good at tackle. Absolutely not. No. From Hunt, mailbag question, are you going to start another Madden League? And if so, how do I join? I'm not prepared to answer that question. I want to reboot back in with the TFGO League, but less and less time for Madden these days as I get older. Not that it's going anywhere, but as far as an online league, that's a big time commitment. All right, from Donovan Dorsha. Oh, and how do you join? I should plug right now the TFGO League. I told them I was going to do some recruiting for them. If you want to join technically my online league. I'm not currently participating, but go to @TFGO League on Twitter. You don't even have to have a Twitter account to check the link out. Just go to the HTML website page. But go to the bio of @TFGO League. It's a 32-man heavy realism league. It is 18 plus. You have to be 18 years or older. But check the bio there and click that. There's an application link, and we'll get back to you. So there's that. Good time to join. Waitlist is short right now. Okay, from Donovan. How would you personally build an NFL team? Let's say the NFL were to expand and you were the head coach GM for the new team. Which scheme would I run and which players would I target in the expansion draft? The scheme just comes down to, like, who can I get at coach? Like, can I get Lincoln Riley? Because then I'll run his scheme. Or do I have to go and hire, like, assistants around the league? If I have to hire assistants around the league, I'd probably go the Shanahan scheme on offense just because it's really easy to replicate right now. And I'd probably start with a base 4-3 Seattle defense just because I think that's the system that's easiest to find talent at those scheme fits. But I might evolve as the time goes on. So that'd be kind of my scheme. And then, I mean, obviously you want a quarterback. You want offensive. I would build through the line, offensive line, defensive line, receivers, quarterback. I'd prioritize position of value. Now, I don't know exactly how this works. Like, do I get to pick 3 unprotected players from each team and pick number 1? How that all works, but I think that answers your question. From Jacob, thoughts on the Dolphins trading for Isaiah Wilson? I'm sure you already answered this on the podcast, but figured I'd ask anyways. Yes, I did. From Ethan, can you describe Lovie Smith's defense and who on the Texans can benefit the most from it? A Menahue breakout year? Well, it's been a while since I followed a Lovie Smith defense, but I know he's got the Tampa 2 background. I'm picturing a very similar defense to what Matt Eberflus runs in Indianapolis, which is 4-3 base, a lot of 4-3 nickel, obviously, and then a lot of cover 2, cover 4, mix in some cover 3 in there, zone heavy. You want an athletic middle linebacker. They have that in Zach Cunningham, so he could benefit from this system. Because you want a guy that can run that mid-read on a cover 2 that can get vertical, and I think Zach Cunningham can do that. Maybe even Dylan Cole could do that. A Menahue could work in like a Michael Bennett-style role as an early down edge guy that slides inside. I do like a Menahue. Justin Reed, decent fit there as a cover 2 safety. I think that fits his skill set. Cover 4 safety, definitely. So I think it's a good, safe defense for a defense that doesn't have a lot of talent. I think the Colts are a great example of a defense that just kind of simplified the scheme, put them in positions to succeed, and let them run with that. From another Ethan, should Gruden and Mayock be fired for the 2019 offseason alone? Yeah, I mean, it's so tough because I like what Gruden does as a coach, but he's just so bad as a GM. I mean, we went on this rant earlier, so I don't need to get into that. But if they're not good this year, it's not looking good because Gruden as a coach is fine, but you can't let your ego dominate the front office. You got to let someone else do that for you because it's just awful. All right, from Zach, thoughts on Leatherwood to Carolina in the second? I think it could be good if he's willing to play guard. Yeah, Leatherwood might be my top guard if that's what he is, if he's willing to do it. I kind of talked about him on last podcast about Leatherwood. But yeah, second round, I have no problem with Leatherwood in the second round, especially for Carolina. You need some offensive line help. I could see that working. And they've had success with kind of the big mauler type. I know it was an older regime, but Darrell Williams and Taylor Moton, that's kind of their type now. Inversely, Greg Little, similar prospect to Alex Leatherwood. So kind of that raw SEC freak athlete coming out. So, maybe they stay away from that route again, but I think Leatherwood's a better player than Greg Little, just from a run blocking perspective. I think he'd be a really good guard. So that wouldn't be a bad pick. Not at all. That's all we got, guys. Let me just refresh this. I think I saw maybe one question come in. Yep. One last question from Micah. So I was wondering if you had any advice on the best way to build a schedule around the whole football content creating field. That's a different question. Finally got my setup and equipment, but really want to use my time efficiently. Wow, that's a tough question. How much time do you put into watching the top prospects before coming up with a okay, so just from a draft point of view, like the top 50 players, I try to do 3 games, a highlight reel, and really dive into those guys and feel good about those. After that, as you start to get, and then even like second, third round, try to get 2, maybe 3 games. But after like your third round guys, I'll be honest, I start with the highlight reel just to get like a snapshot. And then I check the kind of grading profile, the PFF, the stats, the production. I do like to look into like their bio and just kind of do a little research about their sort of backstory, because I think you can kind of gather some sort of like picture as far as like their development and their work ethic and all that stuff. So like I collect information on a guy on there, and then I try to get to a game of every like draftable prospect. I will go into a game and do a review of them. And then if you're looking at a guy that like his grading profile stinks, I'm not impressed by his highlight reel, everyone has him as an undrafted free agent, I'm not going to lie, there's players that I don't take the time to watch a full game. I'll do a highlight reel or a cut up if I can find a cut up of one of those dudes, but a lot of the times cut ups don't exist on those guys. So like example, let's say last year running back Dre Brown out of Illinois. Yeah, he was my 44th running back. Wasn't impressed by him. Here's my blurb on Dre Brown, who's not in the league right now. Jack of all trades back with a lack of elite traits. Protects the ball, runs hard, has good vision, and catches the ball well, but simply lacks speed and quickness. Will need to be a beast on special teams to stick. And then could be like a Jordan Wilkins, who could be a reliable backup, jack of all trades type. Like, I didn't watch a game of Dre Brown. I'll be honest. I watched a highlight reel. I was like, this guy's not explosive, and he didn't grade out well, so I'm not going to waste a ton of time with him. But it also depends how deep you want to go. If you want to be like me and do 500 players, I think you need to kind of cut some corners like that for your own mental health. So from a scouting perspective, that's kind of my goal there. And then like the top 10 picks, you're obviously watching tons of games, 5-6 games at least. Content creation, hard to say, because when I first started, it took me a whole day to do a video. When I first started, I couldn't record a 2-hour podcast like this without editing everything out. So it all kind of depends on like your speed as far as content creation. So I can't really help you there. But send me a link to your stuff. I'd love to see what you're working on, Micah. I hope that helped answer some questions for you. All right, great show, really fun show to do that one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button. If you could leave a review if you're listening to this on iTunes or podcasts or whatever, it would really help me out. So if you have, if you're taking a dump or whatever, you have a couple minutes, I would appreciate you leaving a 5-star review for me. Sorry if that was graphic, but I mean, that's when I do stuff that I don't feel like doing on my phone. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for listening. It was a ton of fun. Come back to YouTube tomorrow. I'm going to get my top 3 team needs for each team, which is going to be a really fun video. I've got some cool graphics prep for that. So I'm really excited to get that one out there. And consider supporting the show on Patreon as well. Patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. Get your questions in. Exclusive draft content. We got a couple film rooms coming out on Friday. So that's all the plugs. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.